Here's an update. Solstice time, summer of 2024. You may remember my friend Bret and I having a conversation and both feeling led to start an initiative similar to Paul Vanderklay and John Van Donk's Estuary program. And I can happily announce that we did launch a pilot of that in May of 2024. And we sat down, I guess it was June 20th, and reflected on what that first month was like and how things are growing and what it might be doing in our community and what we're looking forward to. When we had that initial conversation, it was sort of punctuated by two moments of urination. First one was mine, and I told him about the vision that I had while I was peeing earlier that morning, and then halfway through our conversation, he really needed to pee, and then disclosed sort of what he had seen as possibly a prophetic vision. So I needed to make sure at the top that his bladder was empty before we really got going. And you've peed recently?
You said this was going to be about 10 minutes, so...
Yeah. You never know.
I should make it 10 minutes.
We're good. We're live. We're on. We're recording.
Oh, that's like it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's
I'll
no
edit.
big musical intro. Cool sentence.
That'd be a fun place to start. If you could have your own musical intro to this conversation, what would it be?
To this conversation?
We haven't had the conversation yet, but like let's see if we can trust whatever sort of comes to mind, because we've had a lot of conversations about music, and then sometimes a good song will appear, from the coffee shop.
That's true.
Radio. So what's in the air right now?
It was on Beatles radio one night, and that was my favorite night because I kept
hearing good music.
I really did. And some of them I hadn't heard in a while because it'll throw you stuff. You're like, I heard somebody say that you're like 70% more likely to enjoy a song if it's chosen for you. Like that's why people listen to the radio. Somewhere along that, I remember Stuart Copeland of the Police say that, and so. I heard like
that makes sense,
Steely Dan tune in the background. I was like, I had listened to Steely Dan forever. I was like, hey, wait a minute, that's an awesome song. So and I kept doing that. I was following the conversation, but hey, I love that. But it was Beatles radio.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, that makes sense because you're not wanting to like judge yourself for like, well, I could be listening to whatever else is top of mind. It's just I'm not in control.
So maybe for me it would be like "Do It Again" by Steely Dan or something in the background, kind of coming in there because it's not heavy, but it's got that mystical kind of feel to it.
Ooh. That's a good segue.
Yeah,
all right. So we have had we had a recorded conversation a couple months ago. We put it up on my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
We've had some private conversations since then, and then we have finally officially launched a pilot of the Estuary Protocol in our community. And
we had 4 total, is that correct?
We've had 4 total meetings that actually commenced, and there were a few that we had kind of some last minute hiccups. I was out of town for one. I think you were out of town for one.
Yeah.
And so I thought it'd be like kind of good because we left on a fairly positive and hopeful note. Mm-hmm. I mean, even like going as far as like saying like maybe this is some sort of prophetic vision or an element of something that we were both drawn to and worth
that was
exploring.
More you than me.
Yeah.
Throwing around the prophetic vision stuff.
Yeah. But you had the whole people drinking coffee and deep conversations.
I did,
And so, although we haven't had coffee yet at any of these
sitting
meetings,
in front of a coffee shop.
We are sitting in front of a coffee shop.
Very close.
At night. I mean, just baby
coffee
steps.
Adjacent. Yeah.
Baby steps to get to the actual coffee part.
Yeah.
So I thought we haven't like rehearsed what we want to say here, but I thought similarly as before, if we reflected together on what the last month or so has been like, and like what moving forward is going to look like in our community as well. So maybe if there's anything that's top of mind of like immediately want to jump out and say,
Right.
is there anything right now, or I can try and tee us up in a specific direction?
But go ahead and tee it up. Yeah, that's fine. I don't think if there's anything.
So the first thing was maybe the where, and we decided that the patio of my coffee shop on the east side of town, which is similar to, it's proximal to the east side location of your church. You've got two campuses for your church. Mm-hmm. We both live within a couple miles there. It was like, okay, place confirmed. Any thoughts, good, bad, ugly about place, other than the music is, as long as it's chosen for you?
Yeah, playing the little Beatles radio thing. That was a highlight. I think it's gone great so far. Just we've been able to sit on the patio because we had like picture perfect weather though during the first season, and just in this area.
Yeah,
we had
started
amazing
in May.
Weather. We had perfect weather.
Covered.
But that's not true even now, because now the humidity thing is a new factor and all that. So I think if we were to do it now, we might second guess that a little bit, because you wouldn't be. But everybody was totally comfortable and felt great just to be out there and kind of. But place as far as that goes, environment and all that. Yeah, it was fantastic.
I think for me, I had a little bit of sort of not discomfort, but just sort of feeling like a host or host adjacent or something. That sort of like, because we really wanted it to feel like, even though that we were technically leading it or organizing it, that it was flat and that it was participant kind of led. And so that just like that little bit of host identity for me was something that I'd be intrigued to not experience in a future one, as we look at the future. So that's,
I can see why you'd say that. And that's probably why you feel that way. I have the benefit of not having to care because I really don't. I show up and sit down, and you're going to feel that a little bit more than I would if it were at my house or at my church or something like that.
Yeah. And I think we even talked about if it would be appropriate at your church, and said not at least for now.
Right.
But as we've learned the protocol, maybe that would be something that'd be appropriate in the future. But anyway, that's my only thing about place. Okay, and then the who. How do we choose people to get there and try and meet that sort of target of no more than 8.
Right.
And I can't remember if we drew straws or if I just said, I've got some ideas.
You already had so many just in your mind preloaded that it just seemed like we're going to get to that 8 very, very quickly and we would go over it if I were to throw in any at all, because you could name off some obvious first round draft picks for yourself that, so that's why we went with that.
And I was just in this season of having one-on-one conversations similar to the kind that we would have at Estuary, and so it was like, you would probably really fit in this Estuary thing, at least as we're conceptualizing it. You're invited. Are you interested? And I think all 7 of the people that I invited said, yes, I'm there. Let's do it. Now, Jeff, who was a part of the YouTube series that I just finished for Lent, unfortunately was not able to make it to any of them. So the first week was bad for him, and then but he's moving out of our community, and so maybe that was meant to be in some way that we didn't expect. But but it's interesting because my last conversation with him, where we talked about you, I don't know if you've gotten to watch this.
Oh yeah, listen,
okay.
Yeah, I wanted a rematch because he misquoted me.
Really? Okay, this is great. Well, I hope that you guys can have that rematch or re-conversation, whatever it needs to be. But he really, at the end of our conversation, and he was coming at it, he was sort of challenging sort of my new spiritual approach from an atheist perspective. And he's like, I said, well, Bret and I are getting this Estuary thing going. And he's like, can you start yesterday? Like, we're moving forward. Like Bret and I are going to start this thing. It's called Estuary. And it's this point where the fresh water from a river meets the salt water of an ocean. Like that actual geographical point is called an estuary. And there's like this explosion of life and like biology that like doesn't exist anywhere else. There's like a weird sort of magic right there to where the salt water doesn't creep in all the way up and get into where the fresh water is, and the fresh water doesn't come in and then purify all the salt water. Brett and I feel a pretty clear call that we need to start one of those here in our community. And if whether you want to come or not, I'm officially inviting you. And part of what is appropriate there is there's no questions about God that are off limits.
Well, I would say to you, make haste. So then now, where do people go to commune? And
Well, in Evansville, they can come to our estuary.
Yeah, is it open tomorrow or like what?
Like,
Yeah.
this is needed in our community. And that gave me a lot of encouragement of, that we should do it. So anyways, we got the 8, and you knew, what, 2 or 3 of the folks?
Yes. Yeah.
And then they were eager to go, eager to participate. And what do you remember from those first introductions, either from you meeting people or other people? What do you remember from the initial introductory round and that opening session of how the people seemed to respond to it?
People seem to respond to it well. I like the fact that in the protocols that you can say you can pass, at least on certain things. That's the way they do it. Okay, you can go around, or you can say pass, and we did have someone elect to do that.
Yeah.
Which I was glad she had that freedom. Mm-hmm. So that was a really good, helpful thing. And other people would just kind of chime right in. Now I noticed we did a little kind of leadership training thing where they give some that you're not allowed to pass.
Yes.
Which we had never done before. But that was good. That was helpful. And I think that automatically loosens people up to dive in. But it went a lot different than I thought it would go.
Really?
Not in a bad sense, but just the kinds of things that people shared. People were coming from, we kind of picture that people are like, okay, maybe it's just like atheists and Christians or something like that.
Sure.
And that's not even remotely what it was. Yeah. It's kind of this, I can't even put a definition on it exactly yet. It's sort of spiritual outlook from multiple vantage points, chiming in to different topics in more ways than I anticipated. I thought it'd be more classic, subject matter, the kind of debates that go on, so traditionally on whether it's YouTube or social media, whatever, anything from why has God allowed suffering to just some of the classic debates that have gone on for centuries. I thought it would gravitate in that direction, and it hasn't remotely done that. I mean, we've had that a little, but not in the same way. It feels like being thrown knuckleballs rather than just classic, good hard sliders or something.
Which is good if you're good
absolutely.
in sliders too. It's like, whoa.
That's right. Yeah, it is. So that was what stood out the very first time, and all of them subsequently too.
Yeah.
For me.
Well, and maybe part of the reason why all of them have continued to have that same sort of feeling to them is because it's still the same people. Maybe not all 7 at the same time. But I feel like we've developed a rapport. We've developed traditions is maybe going too far, but we've developed something to where the shared history we have with this. Like I remember texting with you after maybe our 3rd one. It was one of the later ones, and someone had said at the end, like, "I love this thing." Like that. That was her. So it's like, I love this group.
Yeah.
And that set off, some discussions and conversations between you and me and the others of, is this something that we create and then hang on to? We've got our 7 or we've got our 8, and it's kind of locked in.
Yeah.
Or if we open it to others, what happens? Is it, we're all laughing, and the 2 new people, you wouldn't get it. You weren't there for that. This is what I'm wondering. What do you?
Well, that's a classic challenge in even just traditional small groups within a church context. Is how much do you remain open? How much do you close? And to me, it's always been a very legitimate question, because there is a level. Everybody knows this in terms of relationships. There's layers of confidentiality, layers of trust, layers of intimacy, all the rest that you get. You can go to a certain level, and it is difficult to bring others along, or at least you got to go back to bring them along. There's just a social dynamic reality, and that doesn't matter. So I think it's going to be, I like the phrase, attention to manage continually. For any successful group, I think it's going to be that way. But the big question for me is, and I wonder about this with the people that do these in leadership. is how much do you recruit and how much do you open up the door to whoever? Because it's my instinct, and we even had this discussion.
Yeah.
It's my instinct that you have to recruit because it is a certain dynamic. Because the people that you picked,
Sure.
you had pre-vetted,
Yeah.
even unconsciously.
Oh, yeah.
I think you would be great at this. But if you just put a sign on a wall somewhere,
Yeah.
come and be great at this, that's a different thing. So that's the I think the wrestling match we're always going to have, regardless.
Yeah. Well, and I think what we landed on with the group after the discussion was that it is in that sort of more recruiting / inviting next steps of now that we've experienced this for a month, and we kind of put like a month of this sort of pilot period on there to say like, okay, let's try it a few different times. Brett's not here 1 week, Zach's not here 1 week. You know, can other people lead the protocol? And they can. And so how do we grow it? And so tonight, actually, we're going to have the first session that will be at a new location, and we've got a couple, at least one for sure, and possibly 2 new people that'll be participating. And so, I guess we'll start to.
Now, how much of the original group is there? I don't even know the answer to that.
I think we have 4 or 5 from the original group.
Oh, okay.
Committed.
Okay.
So.
And then so 2 new.
So 2 new ones. Still going to have a single group. And we talked about if we invite more than 8 people or more than 8 people show up, that we would experiment with having, 2 tables going on, somewhat, away from each other to have somewhat private conversations. But, we'll find out if that's the way to go, because I do wonder a little bit if it was that sort of open concept of come one, come all, but whoever's interested,
absolutely,
come on in. There's that sort of gathering period to where you have people that you're probably going to have some people that are strangers there. And so are there hosts? Are there people that are, say, hey, come on in. Is this your first time? Get a name tag. And then all of a sudden it goes into all these sort of like things that churches have had to deal with and respond to and create,
and there's going to have to be more proactive leadership just to make it what it's supposed to be.
Yes.
If you just have, like I said, you pre-vetted even unconsciously before, like finding people that you knew fit the model. Whereas if you just sort of, you hope so, and you had an instinct, I think, kind of an intuition that said it would. But if you just kind of open it up, because it was not what even I expected. I arrived with certain preconceived notions, and I was prepared for. I was glad I was prepared for whatever. Yeah. And I got whatever, in some sense, not in a bad way. I just got, whoa, this is a lot different than the conversation went in directions I didn't anticipate. But I was able to kind of go with that. But other people that if you just kind of see a billboard somewhere and you show up, you're going to have a preconceived notion. Here's what it's got to be. And I think it'll take a little bit more intentional leadership to make it function if we do that model. But
well, and it could be how I pitched it to those people as well. You know, what was the language that I used, and what language should we continue to use? I'm trying to remember what I used before, but it was like, I think it was something around the lines of like questions that you wouldn't feel safe to ask at church.
Oh, okay.
But you should.
Yeah.
Or you want to have a place to explore that, but it wouldn't feel safe at a church. I think something around that. And then what I've kind of landed on now is like, it's similar to Alcoholics Anonymous for deep and alive conversations.
Oh, there you go.
And so for me, like the idea of the depth, kind of going back to what you were saying before, after you've got some established relationship, and then the aliveness part of it, where it's like, all right, we're going to put these things that are intellectually, spiritually, contextually, personally, estuarily alive on the table. They're alive for us right now, but then you heard something from someone else, and like it's on you to see what's sort of like, or on us, and that the idea of what did they say in the leadership meeting? The angel shows up sometimes when
they use that a lot.
So then
the angel shows up, and all of a sudden everybody's kind of in this zone of a conversation,
which was kind of neat. So we also jumped on a Zoom call together with a leadership group from around maybe the world, at least around the country,
Yeah.
of people who lead estuary meetings and but what we didn't expect was that meeting was actually hosted in an estuary format.
Yeah.
And so we thought it would just be more like, all right, let's get down to it.
Exactly,
how
yeah,
many
yeah.
people showed up? What
Here's
did you
the
guys talk
PowerPoint.
about?
Do it. Yeah. Huh?
But no, we had to kind of participate. And so then as the conversation went to certain specific people's, context of what they put on the table and what was alive for the group, we had to kind of respond to that.
Yeah.
So we're learning some things, and we'll learn more tonight. It just felt like a little bit of an inflection point of now it's starting to expand it, trying a different location. What are you kind of hopeful for now that we've had a little bit under our belt? You said it was different than you expected.
Yeah.
Are you still intrigued you talked about intentional leadership, to maybe lead a version of this closer into that direction that you expected, as well as letting this instantiation flourish as it has so far?
Yeah, because I think the reason people love it is because I can't think of another context where people have that in some intentional way. I don't know what that context would be. If the church is not that, and the church is that for some people,
sure,
obviously, but on the other hand, those who maybe are sort of distant from the church, what is that other space where you have that kind of thing, where you can go there with subject matter that you do care about very deeply, but unless you just kind of are natural at bringing up in conversation at parties, this is more designed to be that. And I think that's the love that people have for it. I know I'm going to get into a conversation where we talk about really deep meaning stuff and ultimate things and death and life and all the stuff. So that part of it, I would love to lead it in certain directions, but on the other hand, I love that people can sit together and go there, and because I don't know where else they would, really, in that kind of way that stays very civil and animated, and it was very good.
It was both. It was civil and animated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there were disagreements, and it was like, okay, how are we going to hold this? All right, am I hearing you the right way? Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Someone helping to translate. There was all that.
Yeah.
Maybe specifically as a pastor, did you feel yourself having to kind of code switch between? Maybe that's even the wrong way to frame it, but in your brain, I'm in my pastor brain and I'm in my Bret brain. Not to say that they're totally different, but
yeah.
But you know when
sure.
Did you feel any of that to where you would have to kind of? I'll stop trying to put words in your mouth. Do you understand what I'm trying to ask of how you experienced it with introducing yourself as a pastor at the beginning, and them sort of knowing that and how you might be perceived, right, etc.
Yeah, you go through that because you're sort of I don't even know what the right term is for it, but you're that guy at the table.
They'll look to you and be like, "Hey, does the Bible say this?"
Yeah, it's the Bible stuff. I know there's a lot of disillusionment with church. I know there's a lot of church hurt. I know there's a lot of disagreement with fundamental, maybe orthodox beliefs or whatever. And I feel very representative of those things that are disliked or distrusted or whatever else. So I'm aware of that, hyper so. And so, yeah, I kind of have that going on in my mind. It's kind of very interesting and even kind of fun at times to listen to people's honest perceptions about what church is when it's not, and what Christianity is when it's not.
So you felt that sort of comfort from them, comfortability, I should say, to be honest, in light of the fact that it was in front of a pastor who may feel.
Yeah, no, I love the fact that people are honest,
and
it kind of affirms certain things, kind of surprised me in some ways. But I also, in other ways, it's made me more confident about a lot of the things that I hold dear as far as belief system stuff. As I listen to people kind of say things even that I wouldn't agree with or would think, I'm like, oh, okay, well, no, my stuff can size up with this. I'm not intimidated by any of it, or I'm not even bothered by it that much. But that's why, I mean, it's a certain mindset that can engage in this kind of stuff. And not superior, just different, or because I know I've been in the evangelical world long enough, I know some people, if they showed up, they probably they wouldn't know what to do. Like listening and all that stuff, that it'd be kind of a little bit of a freak out kind of thing that would happen.
And I had some of those people kind of go through my mind. I was like, they enjoy religious conversations or maybe even spiritual conversations or deep conversations, but I think there would be some things that would make them a little bit uncomfortable in this context.
And some of that's just a personality thing, and that happens with people who are not of the Christian persuasion, just the opposite. Some people just, their personality is that they get a little prickly, a little more quickly than others.
Prickly more quickly than others. I think my wife has a T-shirt for me that says that. Gets prickly quickly.
But that's why I'm always curious about. But I remember doing that as a small group leader. I had to kind of gauge the chemistry of the social dynamics in the room and think, okay, would this person be a good fit, or would this person blow this place to smithereens? Which I've experienced before. I've watched that, and it's not that unusual.
And I think you brought up very helpfully one time the fragility. It reminded us of the fragility of sort of what we've created, and that'll be another.
Well, I got
sort of
that
test
from the Estuary
well.
discussion online with the founders of it. My perception.
Then the next thing, of course, is the realization that in this whole context, anything can go wrong. Murphy's Law applies here. The estuary is really quite fragile. You can think about it even in the symbolic and metaphoric terms that we talk about. When the currents from the rivers, the tide or the churning river comes into the estuary, and the crashing waves and the dangerous animals of the sea come in, and as my friend Luke from Australia often says, the estuary crocodiles come in.
And I had forgotten
it. Fragile environment was their line. And I remember that kind of set off a little yellow light in my mind, like, hey, and it's not hard to picture at all. It's not surprising. That's why I believed him. It sounded authentic. And I guarantee he's got stories.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're in an election season. We're in the middle of a culture war. I mean, like, there are so many ways that this could kind of go off. It's hot. It's the middle of the summer. I mean, people could we don't even let them inside where there's air conditioning.
Exactly. And we all know that the more comfortable people get with one another, that they can start kind of showing some more true colors or digging a little deeper and throwing out more grenades and all that sort of stuff.
The family Thanksgiving dinner horror stories, right?
So we'll see. We need to have this discussion on the post side of the election.
We will.
To see how that goes, because it'll come up. But I can see this group having very animated discussion about all that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good. I kind of almost want this to be a little bit like a time capsule of just sort of, we felt led to create something together. Mm-hmm. We did this month-long test. We got some data. Not that we're scientists about it, but we're at least documenting it. Mm-hmm. And we talked about what you're sort of hopeful for moving forward.
Yeah, and I love the fact that it was kind of ready, fire, aim to the whole thing. I mean, it really, truly was kind of this is a great idea. Let's just do it, and we did it, and now we're in it.
Yeah,
and it probably could have used maybe more planning. I don't know, but
we could still be sitting here just talking about it. Like, let's put a date on the calendar, and that's our launch date. It's like, okay, now we have some data, some experiences. We learned of what it could be, and I am also excited and encouraged about it. And the gentleman that I invited here tonight, who's coming, I mean, he's very enthusiastic. Like he saw himself in it as quickly as it was described. He's like, this is the kind of thing that I'd be interested in, and I knew he would be interested in that as well. Yeah. So
there you go.
We'll see what his experience is, and what it looks like as it. I do think it's going to go outside of just one group. So I want to see what the growth and division of it ends up looking like, if it ends up being healthier, or it's not like the good old days when there was just our one group. Like it could go that way easily. Yeah,
it absolutely could. And if you increase your odds that something's going to go a little wonky, the more you have. I mean, that's just a law, which is fine. I mean, and you'll have you end up with 10 groups, 7 of them are stellar, 2 of them are okay, and 1 of them's get you in written up.
Well, I guess we'll find out if that happens.
That's right.
All right. Until next time.
Love it. Thank you.
Since we didn't really talk about what an estuary meeting is in a lot of detail in the video, I'll try and give an elevator pitch of what it is right now. It's basically like a conversation club, or at least a protocol observed within a group of 3 to 8 people to try and find the deepest, most alive things within the group, both individually and collectively. And you observe 4 rounds of participation. So the first round is kind of just introductions, but the second round is where you go around and you have to respond to one of 4 prompts of what's something that's alive for you intellectually. Could be a book or a podcast or an article that you've read. Could be something contextually, something in your context of your life, an organization you're involved in, something in your neighborhood, your community that has changed and therefore is alive for you. Or it could be something more personal or spiritual even. And if that is what's alive, then you are invited to sort of put it on the metaphorical table in between everybody. Or if you want to talk about the dynamics of the group specifically, you can bring up something that is alive for you estuarially. And that might make some more sense once you understand a little bit more of the context of what estuary is. And then the third round is everybody sort of deciding of what was just shared and put on the table, where do we want to move next? What feels most alive from what everyone else has shared? And then the fourth round is letting that conversation bloom from those things. And that's it. There's confidentiality and there is a priority on listening to others so that they feel seen and heard, and in turn, so do you. And that's an estuary meeting, and we'd love to get some inquiries from folks who would be interested in participating in one as well.